Hey guys, it's Diana, and it's Monday, July 4th. Today I want to talk about literacy. I feel like literacy is something that people who are literate look over as something just as a given and something that they don't have to worry about in their lives. But for a lot of people who can't read, it's a huge problem. Now, at least where I live, literacy is not like a big, huge deal, like in my town, because pretty much everyone can read. But I know in a lot of areas of the world, there's like large populations of the world that can't read, and that makes it hard for a lot of stuff to happen. On a personal level, that means that someone couldn't read the newspaper and couldn't be up on world events. That means someone couldn't fill out forms and would have a hard time getting a job. That means that someone couldn't read the text on the computer and couldn't use the internet. And then on a bigger scale, it makes it hard to run a society when people can't communicate unless they're talking face to face. Which is interesting to think about this because we've chosen video vlogging as our form of communication, but literacy is still really important. Like, if you couldn't read, you probably would not be catching any subtitles that I flash through this video, which I probably will now that I've said that. Actually, I asked that question at a Girl Scout event I was at. I was running a booth about Nepal, and in Nepal they have a really high illiteracy rate. These groups of Girl Scouts were coming around to the tables, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, that kind of age. They'd come up to the table, and I'd start giving my little presentation. So instead of just telling them the statistics, which were ridiculously high statistics, by the way, but I don't think they would have understood the implications of that. So I simply asked, you guys can read, right? And most of them were like, yeah, except for some kindergartners which just stared at me blankly like, what? I asked them if they could read, and most of them were like, yeah, we can read. And I was like, okay, so tell me some of the things that you can do because you can read. They all kind of looked at me blankly, but then for every group there'd be that one girl who would raise her hand and say, I couldn't go on the computer. I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't address an envelope. Okay, so is there anything your parents do that they couldn't do if they couldn't read? And then a lot more hands went up of they couldn't read the newspaper, they couldn't do their taxes, they couldn't go to work, they couldn't drive because they couldn't read the license plates. So I'm sure that license plate seems like a silly thing, but it's gotta be intimidating to know that there's all these signs outside that you can't read. Now the thing is that in a lot of these countries where people aren't literate, there's not the resources available to them to learn to read. In a lot of cities in the US, if you can't read, you could probably go to some local college or some tutor or the library or something, and there'd be someone right there willing to help you learn, if you were willing to put the time in. But if you live in some rural country in Asia or Africa, or even some rural area in Europe that's got less money, and those resources aren't available to you, I don't think it's something that's a reality for a lot of people. They'd like to read, but they don't even have a book, or they don't even have anything to connect them to somebody who could help them to read. Especially in a rural area, if someone doesn't have a car to drive into a city and they don't have a computer to connect with someone from a more urban area, they probably don't have someone who can teach them how to read. I'm sure that there are certain people in rural areas who are willing to do this, but I don't think it's a mainstream thing for another farmer to be teaching people how to read. Now that would be awesome if every village could get someone who knew how to read and teach everybody else, but I don't think that's what's going on right now. And if you don't know how to read, I strongly suggest you find someone who can teach you how to read, which sounds like ridiculous, but just like a pro, go to the library. If you're watching this on the internet, I'm guessing where you are is developed enough that there is a library somewhere near you that you can get to, and someone there will help you learn how to read. When I started learning the Arabic alphabet, I literally went and Googled kids' worksheets to go learn the letters, which I felt ridiculous doing, printing them off, because they're like these big, colorful workbook pages, but that's where you start, because pretty much my language ability at that point was at the level of a 3-year-old. Just appreciate literacy if you can. Try to learn to read if you can't. Little kids, work hard in school. Thanks, I'm still in Jordan, so I will see you in August.